welcome back to the channel. If you're new, welcome to Leisure Gaming. I am Leisure. With tax season approaching and the release of both Molcharmies, I wanted to revisit a deck that taxes your opponent for adding cards from deck to hand, and it also gained an update with some new cards. So let's take a look at Trickstar Burn. I've covered Trickstar Burn before on this channel, and that video will be in the top right corner if you want to see the original video to this. To start with the deck profile, we have one Trickstar Nightshade. If this card is sent to the graveyard as link material for a link summon of a Trickstar monster, you can special summon this card from the graveyard but then banish it when it leaves the field. This is a one card combo that will allow you to link summon into Bloom and then use his ability to come back to the field and then link summon into Kolchika. And then you can use Bloom and Kolchika to link summon into something else. Next is Max C, which is now at 2 because Molcharmy is now in the game. Next is one Trickstar Lilybell, and this is another extender for the deck. If this card is added to your hand, except by drawing, you can special summon it to your field. You can use the effect once per turn, and this card can attack directly, so when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target one Trickstar monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Next are 3 Trickstar Hoodie, which is one of the new monsters added to Master Duel. If you control a Trickstar Fusion or Link monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is sent to the graveyard as material for a Trickstar Link monster, you can add one Trickstar Fusion or Trickstar Defusion from deck to your hand. You're primarily going to be using this to go into Trickstar Bloom. Next are 3 Ash Blossom. Next are 3 Trickstar Lycoris, and this is a definite must at 3. You can reveal this card in your hand, then target one Trickstar monster you control except Trickstar Lycoris and special summon this card from your hand to the field. Now each time a card is added from your opponent's deck to the hand, you can inflict 200 damage for each of them. The special trick with Lycoris is if you have multiples in your hand, you can activate all 3 as a chain on one Trickstar target that's on the field. Next are 3 Trickstar Candina, and this is a definite must have at 3. When this card is normal summon, you can add one Trickstar card from your deck to your hand. Each time your opponent activates a spell or a trap, inflict 200 damage to your opponent. Next is one Trickstar Aqua Angel, and this is another monster that is new to Master Duel for Trickstars. Link monsters that point to this card cannot be destroyed by battle. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If you control a Trickstar or Marine Cess monster, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard as link material, you can look at all cards in your opponent's hand and all cards that are set that they control. Now for this card, when you do use it as a link summon material, you're going to be using it to summon Trickstar Kolchika as its primary target. Next we have one Trickstar Korribane, and if you control no monsters or all the monsters on the field are Trickstar monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. Now during the damage step, when your Trickstar monster battles an opponent's monster, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard that your monster control gains the attack equal to the original attack until the end of this turn. Pretty much it's an honest for Trickstars. Going on to the spells, we have one Harpy's Feather Duster to help clear out your opponent's backfield, and this deck does kind of struggle with that, so this is a must in my opinion. Next is one Trickstar Fusion, where you can fusion summon one Trickstar Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. That also includes the tokens. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Trickstar monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand, but you cannot normal summon, set, or special summon monsters with the same name for the rest of the turn. Next are 3 Trickstar Festivals, and this is how you're going to get to special summon 2 Trickstar tokens. If a Trickstar monster or monsters you control that was special summoned from the extra deck will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. You cannot normal or special summon monsters the rest of the turn this card is activated except for Trickstar monsters. Angel of Blue Tears is another new card added to Master Duel, where you can target one face-up monster on the field. Its controller's opponent takes damage equal to the number of cards in their hand times 200, then negate that target's effect until the end of this turn. Now if effect damage is inflicted, you can banish this card from your graveyard and set one normal trap directly from your hand or deck. If set from the hand, it can be activated this turn. Next are 3 Trickstar Light Stage, and this was at 2 in the first deck profile, now it is at 3. When this card is activated, you can add one Trickstar monster from your deck to your hand, then once per turn you can target one set card in your opponent's spell and trap zone, and while this card is on the field, that set card cannot be activated until the end phase, and your opponent must activate during the end phase or the card goes to the graveyard. Now each time a Trickstar monster you control inflicts battle or effect damage to your opponent, this card will then inflict another 200 damage to your opponent. Next are 3 Dark Room of Nightmare. Each time your opponent takes damage from a card effect except Dark Room of Nightmare, you inflict 300 damage to your opponent. And this is how you're going to build up a lot of your burn damage with this deck against your opponent. Next are 2 Call by the Grave. This is pretty much a staple in every deck. Next are 2 Disturbance strategies. Your opponent shuffles their entire hand into the deck, then draw the same number of cards. Now if you have Lycoris or multiple Lycoris on the field along with Dark Room of Nightmare and the field spell, every time your opponent draws, the Lycoris effect goes off, the Trickstar Light Stage field spell will also go off, and then Dark Room of Nightmare will also go off. The same strategy can be said here with Trickstar Reincarnation, where you can banish your opponent's entire hand, and if you do, they draw the same number of cards. I normally like to activate this on their draw phase where it gets rid of their entire hand, and if you have Lycoris once again on the field, it does rack up a lot of damage. This was at 1, it is now set where you can play 3, so if you wanted to get rid of the Disturbance strategies, you can drop the 2 Disturbance strategies to then make room for 2 more Trickstar Reincarnations. Of course, we have 3 Infinite Impermanents. Next is 1 Trickstar Diffusion, and it is searchable off of Hoodie, and you can only activate one of these effects, where you can fusion summon 1 Trickstar Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing its materials from your graveyard. More than likely, you're going to be banishing your Link monsters, which will be Colchica and Bloom. Or you can immediately, after this effect resolves, Link summon 1 Trickstar Link monster. Then you could banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Trickstar monster you control this turn. While that monster is face up on the field, your opponent's monster can only target that monster for attacks. Next is 1 Maiden of Blue Tears. If your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, and you control a Link monster, target one of them, destroy it, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to half its original attack. If effect damage is inflicted while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, then target 1 normal spell in your graveyard or banishment, set it, but it cannot be activated this turn. Going into the extra deck, we have 2 Trickstar Bandrematus, and this card is new to Master Duel and definitely helps this deck out a lot as an extender and a power-up where Trickstar Link monsters you control that point to this card gain 1000 attack. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn, so if this card is Fusion Summon, you can add 1 Trickstar card from your deck to your hand with a different name from the cards you control and in your graveyard. If effect damage is inflicted, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field and its attack becomes 0. We have 1 number 41 Baguska, and this is here pretty much for the stall. 1 Trickstar Bloom. If this card is Link summoned, you can make your opponent draw 1 card. If a face-up Trickstar monster this card points to is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each card in their hand. Next are 2 Trickstar Colchica, and you can only special summon Trickstar Colchica once per turn. When a monster is destroyed by battle involving your Trickstar monster while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, then target that destroyed monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack. Next we have 1 Trickstar Holly Angel, and this actually went from... Next you have 1 Trickstar Holly Angel, and in the previous deck profile we actually had this at 2, but we did drop this to 1 this time. Each time a Trickstar monster is normal or special summoned to zones that this card points to, inflict 200 damage to your opponent. Trickstar monsters this card points to cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. If your opponent takes damage by Trickstar monster's effect, this card gains attack equal to the damage that your opponent took. Next are 2 Trickstar Crimson Heart, and if you want, you can actually drop this to 1 to make room for another Holly Angel. Each time a Trickstar monster is normal or special summoned to a zone this card points to, you gain 200 life points. You can discard 1 Trickstar card, both players draw 1 card, but if your life points was at least 2,000 higher than your opponent's when this effect was activated, you can draw 2 instead. Next is 1 Trickstar Divaritas, and you can only control 1 Trickstar Divaritas at a time. If this card is special summoned, you can inflict 200 damage to your opponent. If your opponent normal or special summons a monster or monsters, inflict 200 damage to your opponent. Next are 2 Trickstar Noble Angels, and these are new to Master Duel as well. If this card is Link summoned, you can add 1 Blue Tears card from your deck to your hand. If you have a fusion monster in your field or graveyard, you can target 1 Trickstar monster in your graveyard and special summon it. If effect damage is inflicted, you can target 1 face-up card on the field and destroy it. 1 Trickstar Foxglove Witch. If this card is special summoned, you can inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each card they control. If this Link summon card is destroyed by battle or effect, you can special summon 1 Link 2 or lower Trickstar monster from your extra deck, then inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each card they control. 1 Trickstar Bella Madonna. While this Link summon card points to no monsters, it is unaffected by other cards' activated effects. If this card points to no monsters, you can inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each Trickstar monster in your graveyard with a different name. So that's it for the deck profile for Trickstar Burn. I hope you enjoyed. I do really like playing this deck because 1, you get to burn your opponent for adding cards to your hand, and that seems to be happening a lot in the meta. Also, you can special summon cards that allow you to attack, so you don't just have to rely on that burn. I hope you did enjoy, and I hope you leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.